So what is up, guys? Nick here, helping you to master your technology. Should you buy the iPhone 10 in 2023? That is the aim of today's video. Now, the iPhone 10 launched almost 6 years ago. That will be later this November, but it's well over 5. And, you can get this phone for 1/5 the cost. So we're over 5 years, 1 out of 5. This phone comes in at under $200. Now, obviously, a lot of you are already well past this, have upgraded many times already, but this is for people who maybe are still interested in a classic, affordable, cheap iPhone. This one's going to come in right around 150 to 200 bucks, maybe even less than that. Off to the edges, we do get a stainless steel build here, and you could see very premium from pretty much every corner right here on the iPhone 10. Definitely very nice. So overall, you're not really sacrificing much in the way of a premium build. This phone feels nice, looks nice, and even though it looks dated, Apple did a really good job at letting this thing survive many, many years of usage. When I take a look at something like this versus like how an iPhone 5S or something like that aged, I feel like this aged much better. Like, we still have silent switches, we still have stainless steel, we still kind of have a lot of similarities on newer phones. So this kind of really was the future at the time. It was the start of the future. And then we have the size of this phone. It just still feels nice in the hand, like it has that nice curve around the edges. I talked about this in my 10s Max video in the last episode. But this one, with the 5.8-inch size, this and the 10s, these phones just feel nice in the hand. A lot of people like the mini devices because those feel nice in the hand, their sizes, but this one was a sweet spot. It gave you a big enough screen to do what you needed to do, 3D touch, just an overall easy to manage everyday device that felt premium. So still in the build, the body design, while old, still nice, honestly. Like, you're not going to go and buy a brand new phone that costs $100 to $200 and get a build like this. You're going to go find a budget phone that's going to have some plastic materials. Yeah, it might have slightly more fun to use cameras, but I would bet that the iPhone 10 could go toe to toe with some $100 phones that are brand new. And then you have a really solid display here for the money. Now, you have an OLED panel that gets plenty bright enough, over 600 nits. It does have a fast 3D touch response, so haptic feedback, very fast on there. And then you do have OLED panel on board as well. So colors are pretty acceptable as well. You'll probably quite like the colors on this phone. So when you are scrolling through Instagram, you're checking out your photos, you're doing whatever you're doing, it's going to look good. Honestly, I don't really see a big difference between this and a current iPhone when it comes to its overall display quality. Yeah, the displays have better saturation, a little bit better colors now. They have fixed some of the colors. They made them brighter, but honestly, they have not changed my life in any way since the iPhone 10. They just look a little bit better to my eye. That's about it. Some other things have changed my life experience with using phones, but in terms of the text, not really. The iPhone 10, it's been about the same since all the way back in 2017 when this phone did launch. Now, when it comes to software, we are taking a look at a pretty similar software experience to some of the newer phones. You can see we get updates like 16.3 on board here, app library, widgets. It's the same overall experience. And this is what Apple's been good at for a long time, is making their phones stay supported. And this one's no different. So buying this now, I was talking about this in 2019 in my Should You Buy, as well as in 2018 when I was recommending you buy this back then, that you were going to have software support for 5 or 6 years. We're in our 6th year already, and this phone is still updated. I'm wondering if it gets dropped this year, so this might be why it might be hard to recommend at this point. This will probably be something that I would be concerned about. But if you're just buying this as a backup, you broke your phone temporarily, or even if you're just passing on to somebody who doesn't really do software updates like that anyway, this will probably be a solid, cheap option. I honestly would try iOS on a budget with this phone as well, because you get the latest version, you get to play with the apps, and it kind of performs okay as well. Speaking of the performance, an Apple A11 Bionic clocked in at 2.39 gigahertz and 3 gigs of RAM. Now, this was the start to the Bionic chipset line, and man, have they really went to town on improving that. That's much faster now, but it's kind of funny how you can run iOS here on an iPhone 10 and it kind of hums along just fine, even though this phone is several years old. You do notice you got to wait a second or two versus some of the newer phones out there, and it does heat up like ridiculous versus some of the newer phones when you are especially playing games for a while. You will feel that heat unless you have a case on the phone. And when you do really push the CPU, it definitely drains the battery a little bit more than I would find on, one of the newer phones. So definitely keep in mind, you're not getting that same performance. Look, I can't even go home. It was lagging up right there. So you're not getting that same performance like anything newer than this. Obviously, even a 10S is a far better option right now in terms of performance. But if you're just looking for a lower priced iPhone to try out, this one actually can still run most of what you need. And I remember trying out SEs. Those were good, but 5Ss and 5s, they were so horrible after 5 years. But I don't see that here on iPhone 10. We've reached a point now where phones are so fast that they can last so long. I would just imagine where an iPhone, 13 is going to be in 5 years. It's probably going to be super quick still. So this was just the start, and it just shows that the Bionic series are really ahead of their time. This thing really performs solid for being the age it is. You can definitely get by. When it comes to cameras, a dual 12 megapixel rear, not super exciting anymore, but this camera actually is still average today. It's not amazing, but it's average. You can definitely get an average nice photo out of this. I'm actually going to show you some photo samples I took just yesterday with this to revisit it, and you'll see how it does. It can still do 4K at 60 frames a second. So this is not even new anymore. We've had this for years. And it's kind of funny how some cameras won't even do 4K 60 even now, like actual cameras, but you can do it on a 6-year-old iPhone. Kind of funny. This one right here also gives you a pretty okay front-facing camera, 7 megapixels. Nothing to say it's amazing, but it'll do okay, for what you're paying for this. Much better than like if you got an old BlackBerry or something. This thing will do amazing versus something like that. So I would say the cameras are okay. They're not horrible. They're not amazing. Check out some samples to revisit this and let me know your thoughts on how this looks in 2023. Couple other things I want to talk about here: battery life and storage, as well as connectivity. So battery life on this is most of the day, not a full day. You'll be needing a charge in the middle if you're a heavy user, later in the day if you're a medium user, and if you're a light user, you could probably make it today if you don't use the phone. But low power mode could save you in 2023 on the iPhone 10. It's nothing to, laugh at. It's okay, but this phone will be pretty low most days for you. It's not going to be super impressive. That's something that you would really notice going to a newer iPhone. And that's not just because it's new and has a new battery. That's because Apple's improved the efficiency, they've improved the size of the batteries and the processors, so they allow you to hold a charge a lot longer. Audio performance on here is surprisingly still okay. Again, they've actually improved this as well. They've made these louder on newer phones, so you'll notice they don't sound quite as good anymore, but at the time they sounded great, so now they just sound pretty good, just not amazing. And overall, if you're looking for pretty good phone call quality, the iPhone 10 doesn't really provide that too well. Has 4G and it doesn't have the best signal strength out there. So don't buy this looking for the best phone on the market. It's not the best at this, but it'll do okay, and it still has iMessage. So if you want to do iMessage, you can still do that. So under $200, the iPhone 10, is it a steal? Not exactly. Is it a worthless purchase? No, it just depends on the user. If you need an iPhone as a backup, you lost one, broke one until you get your next one, it's a great little cheap pickup. If you're looking for a pass down phone to somebody who doesn't really need the latest stuff, great cheap pickup. But this phone overall is not really recommended for anybody who's serious about using smartphones in 2023. But it was nice to revisit, and I think it held its own. I wonder if it's going to get iOS 17 later this year. So stay tuned to the channel for when we cover iOS 17. And if it comes to this phone, we will cover it on this one. Let me know if you have an iPhone 10, if you held on, if you're planning on upgrading this year, or you already did your upgrade, down below in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already. Nick here. Be sure to be well, and peace.